Hi, this is Dennis with Second Chance Tackle. Today I have an opportunity to work on a fun reel. This one is a Garcia Kingfisher. It's the GK22. It's a spin fishing reel. If you look closely at it, it bears some resemblance to a Mitchell Garcia, but the two companies at this point in time were not affiliated. This one was made in Japan, and it says the Garcia Corporation. And Garcia was a distributor. Garcia was not a reel manufacturer. They had reels done by other companies. And from the 60s and the 70s and into the early 80s, they distributed the Mitchell product line in spinning reels. And then through a series of events, Mitchell and Garcia both went bankrupt, but Mitchell went bankrupt first, and Garcia I think was to blame in some regards because they had cut back on their ordering and kind of forced Mitchell into bankruptcy, but I could be incorrect in that. But they went first, and then Garcia still needed fishing reels to distribute, and they turned to Japan and some of the Japanese trade companies to make the reels for them, and this is one of them. This is the Garcia Kingfisher GK22. They also had Kingfishers in conventional reels, and those are beautiful German silver side-plated reels. If you ever get a chance to get any of those GK models, there's something to look at. This one's a beautiful reel. It's about, by today's standards, it's a size 20. It's perfect for inshore, but mostly designed for fresh water from boat or for pier, and it's working. Surprise. Not a surprise at all. Some of these vintage reels are really good. Well, today we're going to take this reel apart. We're going to show you the inside of it. We're going to make sure that it's tuned up and ready to go fishing. So I want to start by removing the exterior pieces and parts, and when I do that, I want to encourage you to subscribe to my channel if you like to see and learn about fishing reel service, repair, corporations, the industry itself, and well, just how to keep your reel fishing for a long time to come. This is a good channel for you to learn from. That's the whole idea behind it, to give your reels a second chance, to teach you how to do it yourself. And well, if you like that, please subscribe, and if you do subscribe, please use the notification button. That'll let you know when I'm posting, and well, you can see if that's a video you would like to watch. I work on all kinds of fishing reels, everything from spin fishing reels to old antique reels to the most common and desired reels today. We're going to take off the exterior parts. The first one is we're going to remove the handle. The handle comes off in the opposite direction of the retrieve. So if you're turning this one counterclockwise, then you want to remove the handle in a clockwise manner. This is going to screw off. We can tell that we've got the old squeaky reel gets the oil kind of thing going here. The handle is on a stud. A little bit of oil and a little bit of a spin will take care of that chirping. When I take my pieces and parts off, I put them into a parts tray. That helps me keep track of the pieces and parts. I recommend that you have a parts strategy. It doesn't have to be the parts tray. That parts tray works for me. My system is basically organized chaos. I kind of know where all the pieces are. And I also recommend that you take pictures along the way as you are removing your pieces and parts. Stop at critical junctures and take a picture just so you have a backup plan in case the pieces and parts go flying or something, or maybe you have to set the project down for a while. When you come back, you don't quite remember where a piece or part or the orientation went. Use those pictures. So I'm taking these screws off and I'm putting them in a corner of that tray that you saw. And one of the things I'm trying to notice as I do that is whether all of these screws are the same length. There are an awful lot of times when you assume when you're doing reel repair that, well, it doesn't quite work out the way you assumed. One of the screws is longer or shorter or wider or thinner, and the next thing you know is you don't know where to put that screw, and it becomes problematic. In this case, all of those screws are the same. We have a click, click, click going here. That's the anti-reverse. Before I ever remove these cases on reels like that, I like to throw the levers so that that click is not engaged. And well, on some of these reels, sometimes that dog gets trapped. And if the dog's trapped and engaged, it becomes a problem. All right, let's open it up, see what we got inside. And this would be kind of an example of that. Although this dog is screwed down, which makes it a lot easier to hold it in place and not worry about it. A rather simple design, but it doesn't mean that simple is bad, right? Simple is, well, it's a good thing. And folks have asked me from time to time, what are your favorite reels? And when I start to evaluate what I like about reels, the simplicity and design is high on my list of features and functions that I rate my reels on. That doesn't mean that the most sophisticated and most well thought out types of designs are bad. This means that I kind of prefer the easier stuff. I'm just noticing that we got a lot of old dirt and grease and the like in here. That's probably somewhat affecting the performance of the reel, so I'm just going to scrape that off. All right, we've got two things going here. We have a side plate with a gear, take a picture here. And we have the rotor piece with the axle shaft and slide. I'm going to take the axle shaft off next. Take a picture here. You'll notice that this is not a symmetrical slide. One side is got a kind of a ramped or a U-shaped portion to it. The other side is flat. And I imagine it is possible, I would imagine. I just can't get that screw out. I would imagine that there's times when these things get flipped around and then people wonder, why is it not working properly? Oh, that guy's, it's a deep screw. Well, while I'm doing this, if you have any questions on this reel or any reel, and maybe you're wondering about something, maybe you're wondering about the reels that were made in Japan at the time, just leave those questions in the comment section. I will try to answer those for you. Well, that's the screw that we've been struggling with. Now we can pull that whole axle shaft and the spool assembly off. You could have removed the spool first, but in this case I just chose to leave it on the axle shaft. We'll take it off here, take a look underneath, see what we have here. And we have drag washers in here so we can service this. Notice on your spool two things. One, got some of that old grease there. You want to take that off because as you're bringing that to the downstroke, you don't want that bumping against the rotor nut. That'll cause a little bit of a bump in the performance of the reel, so clean that off. This is your click ratchet that will make noise with the clicker in the back here, this little tongue, when your spool is letting line out. It's sometimes called a bait alarm. And the shim washers here control the height of the line on the spool. That shaft is in good condition. And take that spool and just lay that off to the side for a moment. We will take off the crosswind block. And so much of your service of a fishing reel is just cleaning and examining the pieces and parts. Now on a reel like this, if you've got a broken part, you probably have a parts reel because it's very difficult to find. I can't tell you the last time I've worked on one of these, but I'll bet you it's a decade at least. And that was before I was doing my YouTube channel and before I was making videos, so I thought when I saw this one, we'd go ahead and do a video on this. Kind of a fun reel, along with the history. All right, we're just going to use a cotton swab and some penetrating oil to work that old grease off of there. This one's in nice condition. We'll put that into the basket there. And we have a nut here, and it's probably a 12mm nut. So there's a tool out there. It's a Mitchell deep socket tool. You don't need to use that. Any deep socket will work, but you're going to need a deep socket. A open end wrench will not reach in there to allow you to remove this. The rotor nut goes into my tray. Now I can pull up and out on the rotor. And we've got, I believe, one ball bearing in here, so we're going to get to that in just a moment. This looks very much like a Mitchell bail setup. This is our trip lever. This is our bail on both sides. Here's your line gathering side of this. It's going to open up like this, lock, and underneath here you're going to see this. And when that comes around here, it's going to hit this ramp. And that ramp is going to push it back. Try not to hurt myself here. And it's going to flip. If your bail is working, you do not need to take the bail off. I use a penetrating oil just to kind of loosen it up a little bit, but you can see this is flipping fine. I just caught the trip. Just work it in, and as long as it's working, you'll be fine. Okay, set that off to the side. Next, we want to go to our retainer that's holding the bearing in place. You're going to need a micro screwdriver for that. This is small. I was just talking about this the other day, about the different tools that are needed in order to maintain fishing reels. I think for the most part you can do it with a couple of screwdrivers, a wrench, and maybe a pair of pliers. But every now and then there's some tools that just make it easier, and having a set of these micro drivers, and this is a Pittsburgh set, so Pittsburgh is Harbor Freight, so it's not that expensive, but they're nice to have on hand, and they certainly facilitate the job being done. All right, that was probably a place you wanted to take a picture on that ramp. Our pinion gear has fallen from the bottom, and we should have a ball bearing up here because it says there's a ball bearing in this reel, and there it is. It's in the collar underneath. Test the bearing. It's working fine. I'm just going to use oil. I do oil bearings. I do not grease bearings. And we can put that back together again. I'm going to just let that grease go in there for a second. That's the top collar. If you took a picture, you remember where that goes. I'm going to use a parts brush to pull through on the pinion gear to get the old grease out. And sometimes if it's stubborn, I'm going to go to a pick. Again, this is another little tool. It's designed to just help me with that old grease, and you can see that grease is pretty coagulated. Now you don't have to run out and get the pick. I find I use it for all kinds of things like centering holes for screws and things like that. If you don't have that, well, here's an example of a pick. It's a safety pin. And just take the safety pin and run it through there. That'll work too. The whole idea is you don't want speed bumps clogging these channels. So old grease will do that. Your reel will stutter a little bit. And well, why do that if you can avoid it, right? Okay, a little bit of that. Then we'll just reassemble that top end there. I'm going to use fishing reel grease to start. This is Penn Precision Reel Grease. And I use an artist brush to apply it. Okay, this comes up from the bottom. I guess we can put this in place. That bearing was face down, if you remember. Face down, pinion gear up. We can grab our ramp. Now this ramp, the collar has this little slide bar that goes up, so again, taking pictures helps with that. I'm going to go into my parts tray. I'll probably drop this down anyway, but yep. Just be aware as you're doing this, if something falls, where it falls, when it falls, so on. All right. Try and get the middle one started first. If that doesn't work, I have a screw starter here that usually works. And while I'm doing this, if you have any questions on this reel or any reel in particular, maybe you're working on one and you're stuck, maybe you want to know a little bit more about the reel manufacturer or where the reel was made or when the reel was made, or have questions like that, Just leave them in the comment section. I do try to answer those. Most of the time I try to answer those in the morning. So if you're leaving something in the evening, probably won't see it until maybe 10 o'clock or so Eastern time in the morning. And if you're in a jam, I'll try and help you out. Maybe you've tried to reassemble something and it's not working and I don't have a video on it. Or maybe I can help you along the way. And I'll try my best. Alright, now we can take that greased up pinion gear, slide that through. We can put a little bit of grease onto the shoulder there, or the neck, or whatever we want to call that. I'm going to bring over that spacer. Again, if you were wondering, gee, where did that come from? If you had taken pictures, you knew it belonged there. And then we'll put that part back on. It's a relatively simple reel to work on, but one that performs nicely. This reel was made in Japan. There's several trade reel manufacturers that were around in the 70s and the 80s doing that. And a lot of times you're going to find these reels have a U-collar here rather than a ball bearing setup like this one has. So this is a quality reel for the time, even it's simple in design. The dog is off. We can remove that main gear. Notice when you remove the main gear, there is a shim washer on the back end of that. And again, if your dog is working, you don't need to remove that. You can. You don't need to. If you do, make sure you pay attention to where that anti-reverse dog spring is so that you can reset it properly. This one has two. It has a spring for your cam, and it has a spring that runs from the back of the neck here around the screw and to the front of the neck here that's holding it in place. That anti-reverse dog is going to intersect with the ridges on the main gear on the back here, and we can see that there's some old greases here. Chances are that when this reel was stored, it was stored this way, wherever that position is, because gravity would have worked to pull all of that old grease down and have it pool in the bottom. So just a spray of the penetrating oil will help to relieve that. It loosens it up, and then I've used a brass brush there. I'm going to use a cotton swab here, and then we'll use that brush to pull through the teeth here like we did with the other one, the pinion gear, making sure it's all clean, making sure all of the teeth are nice and uniform and that they're not in any way distorted. Okay, I'm going to bring this back in. I'll apply the grease. You want to grease a couple of things. The face is where that slide is going to work. The teeth is what's going to intersect with the pinion gear, and a sleeve here for channeling through what is a side case and a bushing. All right, with all of that greased up, we can put this back in. This is a good time to put the handle back on. The reason to do that is it's going to hold the main gear in place. Okay, we have our slide now. Remember the picture you took, right? Your slide is got a ramp on this side. Just going to put a little bit of grease there. That's probably where the inner slide is going to be. This is the back end of it. So let's go reset that. Now we're going to take our axle shaft, light coating of grease on that. Don't put too much on because it'll scrape off as it goes through the pinion gear. Bring that down, face that hole in that to the outside. Probably easier to see it here. Bring it in, make sure it merges in, and then find that hole for the screw. That screw gave me trouble before. It was longer than I thought it was. A lot of times these are very short screws. So just take your time. Hit a moving target here. The axle shaft is moving. And align your hole. think I have that yet. Maybe. Okay, we got it. Be patient. Don't force anything. If you force something, a lot of times it's just going to cause you some trouble. Get that set, and then I'm going to put a little bit more grease on top of that now, so that that slide works easily. Okay. Next up then, we want to merge the side case and that stud with this block, and usually that's a visual thing. Then when you think you have it, turn your handle, make sure that the axle shaft is going up and down. I think we have it. Okay, the 3 side plate screws are all the same. And this is a triangular shape, so it doesn't matter too much which one you put in first. My only word of caution with this is to not tighten it all the way down, because you want to make sure that you do get all 3 started. Sometimes when you tighten them down, the holes are just a little bit out of alignment, and all of a sudden you start struggling. So Garcia went out of business, I think, in the early to mid 1980s, and then it kind of went back where it was all founded. Pure Fishing and Abu purchased the Garcia trademark, and now you have Abu Garcia ambassadors and the like, much like you had the Mitchell Garcias of the time. Of course, the distribution company and all of that is long gone. I think they probably went out of business as the Japanese companies gained prominence. They no longer needed to be just trade reel manufacturers. So if you looked at like a Daiwa reel, Daiwa was making reels for Montgomery Ward's and Penn, Sears, companies like that, and then all of a sudden they just started selling under their own brand name. Look at that. How nice is that? Put your anti-reverse clip back on, make sure that that works. All right, quick look at the drag washers. They're probably hard washers. Most of the time, a reel like this, they didn't want to put in anything that required maintenance. Sometimes you'll even find these are just locked in the case. You have one big old cork washer. How do you like that? Now you can't do anything with that. That's not going to absorb anything. So just put it back in. Make sure it's clean. Bring this back. Take our tie down clip. Make sure that that gets into the ridge in the spool. It's got a pipe cleaner for a kind of not only a silencer, but it's going to keep the water out. And here's your spool on. Let's tighten that down by putting the drag adjuster knob on. And it's still got the old G from the Garcia, from the Mitchell Garcia. Tighten it down, make sure that it's nice and tight. And that's it. Wow. That's the Garcia Kingfisher GK, Garcia Kingfisher 22 freshwater spin fishing reel, and boy, it's a beauty. Works, turns free and easy. And well, you know what? I think that's going to become a giveaway reel. So stay tuned, stay watching, and we'll probably feature that as one of the channel giveaways. I like that reel a lot. Okay, I want to take a moment to thank our first responders, our police, fire, safety, rescue, everybody involved in keeping us out of harm's way. I want to thank you, the channel viewer, for watching, for making this channel what it is, and for the comments and the loyalty you've expressed towards the channel. This is Dennis with Second Chance Tackle, wishing everybody a great day.